Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Finish More Music podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a true legend in the world of house music. Hailing from New Jersey, it is the one and only Harry Choo Choo Romero. Hello, my friend, and thank you so much for joining me on the show.
How are you, man? I'm great. Thank you for inviting me to come and chat, man. I always love talking about anything music related. So it's my pleasure to be here. And yeah, let's get to it.
Let's rock and roll. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what I like to start with, I'm always really fascinated in is what a day in the life of you looks like when you're going into the studio creating, obviously in the normal world where you're maybe DJing and you have all stuff planned for the weekend. What does it look like? And do you have any creative rituals, habits, superstitions, anything that gets you in the right frame of mind when you go in the studio to like kickstart your tracks?
Well, it kind of, the creative process is the same, but yet it's different every time you go in the studio. But what's consistent about how I kind of do things, it's always been based. All the music I make is based around a sample. Now, what that means is I'll start with a sample, something that's taken from another record. We all know what a sample is. Hopefully, whoever's listening, and I start kind of layering over it, and then sometimes that jump off point and make a left and make a right and go completely different. But sample. So for me, it's always about digging for an inspirational sample, whether it's half a bar, whether it's a whole bar, whether it's 4 bars, 8 bars, whatever. It's always based on the excitement comes from when you find a really good sample. So the creative process is for me is like, okay, let's say I was, I don't know, at dinner and there was a song playing and I Shazammed it. I'll lock it in my phone, it saves. Then I'll come home, I'll download it, sample the part that I heard, and then you start creating the track, right? But the way it always works out, not always, the way it usually works out is you'll never hear the original sample. So it's interesting in the sense that like I come here, yes, you'll hear the sample at first, and the more and more I work on it, the less you hear the sample till it's completely gone. So that's always been my method of working. I mean, it's gotten me this far. For me, I've always seen it as well, I'm not a musician. I got to get inspiration from somewhere. I don't really play keyboards, although I can, I can replay things and play bass lines and simple chords and stuff like that. But so the process is I'll come in my studio with an idea, I sample it, and I start working. Now, during the process is when you say, okay, this tends to be a little more on the techie side. This could lend itself more to a more vocally kind of traditional, in air quotes, I'm doing air quotes, house music, if you will. So that's the process. The process has always been finding a sample and working from there. And it's fun and exciting because what blows me away is like 4 hours into the session, the sample's nowhere to be found, yet there's a working sketch. So it's really, really cool, man. And, I've, through doing it for so many years, you just embrace the process and you just kind of follow along, because the music tells you what to do. It's just about, what I call spending enough time in the chair to know how to go about it in a very effective and efficient way. So I don't know if I'm jumping ahead with this answer, but so for me, those days of 12, 15, 16, 20-hour sessions, that just doesn't happen anymore. For a couple of reasons. I don't have the time. My wife and I are raising a family, and I have other interests besides music. But I've found a way to work really efficient and in short, powerful bursts. And right now, where I am in my life as a producer, DJ, father, husband, all that stuff, this is the best way to work, and it's awesome.
Brilliant stuff. So how long does it typically take you now to well, I guess let's start there, to sit down with the sample and then to come with what you described as the sketch? How long would that typically take until you're going, yeah, there's a thing here that's going to get turned into a finished piece of music?
I would say about an hour.
Right. Oh, so it's super, super fast now.
It is. It's super fast. Again, I work in short bursts, and I don't question myself. I just move, 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 move. I found that, that really captures the spontaneity of it all, like the jazz side, if you will, just spontaneous, just following the whatever ideas you have and kind of brainstorming. That's really the best that I found for me, the idea and a great backbone and a great foundation for the song or track or whatever.
Yeah, awesome. I love the idea that the sample then goes missing. So obviously a lot of tracks keep the sample in, but it's the initial inspiration. So you mentioned
100%.
that could be sort of you out in a restaurant or wherever it might be, you hear a track. The sample itself, does it tend to often be like a musical melodic type thing, vocal type thing, or a drum beat, or it could be a real mixture?
It could be either of the options, you just mentioned. Sometimes it could be a drum beat. Like I mean, I listen to a lot of like jazz and a lot of older funk and disco, and sometimes when it comes to the break, you hear the drum break, I'll just take the drum break. You know what I mean? It's whatever catches my ear. It could be the whole thing. Maybe it's like the end of a chorus where the singer kind of just sustains a word, and it's anything. It's anything. But the way we filter how we listen is what separates me from you and from everybody else. Is I may hear something that another producer won't catch. Vice versa, another producer will hear something that I may not catch. And that's kind of the beauty of not working with sample packs. You know what I mean? It's the old school way. It's the way hip hop was invented. You know what I mean? It was just bugging out guys in the studio, listening, taking stuff and making it their own. I love the process.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's your unique taste at the start, and then it's your unique interpretation of the thing that you've sampled and that you're working with. So when you have a sketch, what does that look like? Is it sort of a chunk of the arrangement? What we
It's
would
a
refer
well,
to as
what
a
it
loop?
is
Or...
it's usually an 8-bar loop. But sometimes, like when I'm working on the 8-bar loop, I'll hear like a breakdown idea. So I'll extend it to 16 bars or 24 bars and create that 8-bar or 16-bar kind of, breakdown, I guess we can call it. And so I'll loop the 24 bars to hear kind of how it comes out of the breakdown, and I'll get a general idea, of how exciting it is. So, and that kind of that'll kind of dictate. I said dictate.
Yeah, okay. I would say we'll edit it out, Harry, but we won't.
It's funny. It's funny. That kind of dictates. That kind of dictates the vibe of the track, and the arrangement. Is it going to be a 5-minute track or 7-minute? Is there enough elements in this 8, 16, 24 bar little chunk of the arrangement that I could kind of milk and exploit for 7.5, 8, maybe a 9-minute track? Who knows? So that's kind of when that decision is made, when I'm working in that 8, 16, 24 bar, maybe even a 32 bar loop. And that's kind of where I'll say, okay, this particular track, I have an idea where I want to take it arrangement wise. I know the ingredients it has right now will get me this far, and you know what I mean. So that's kind of where those decisions are made in the first 2 to 3 hours of me working on an idea.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing is that the original sample that is going to catch your ear, that just is a gift from the muse, the gods, whatever we want
Yes,
to call it, the higher power, so to speak. Then you take that and you listen to what the music is telling you, and it just flows. And then at some point, there's a tipping point where all of a sudden it goes from just flowing to you suddenly mapping out in your mind, this is where this
correct,
wants to go, and then you build it from there. So
correct.
do you get straight into the building it out and finishing it, or do you normally take a break and come back in and that's like a separate session?
Well, no, usually what I do is, like I mentioned earlier, I work in short, real kind of powerful, forward moving blasts. Usually what I do is I'll sketch an arrangement out in the first 3 hours. Rough arrangement. You know what I mean? And then I'll come back the next day. No, okay, in these 8 bars and 16, I have to add some kind of texture or something. So I'll actually write it down on a piece of paper next to me. I always keep a notebook handy. And the next day I come back with fresh ears, adjust some levels, do some mixing, and go ahead. And what I call is I get rid of all the clumsy. Like, I like really smooth transitions. I don't like clumsy sections. To me personally, I just feel like it sounds more professional when you take your time and create those transitions where it doesn't really kind of jump out at you like, whoa, what just happened? Like, I don't like those kind of moments in a track. Sometimes I do, in a keyboard solo or whatever, something really loud and weird is cool. But generally speaking, I like to really make it sound what I call expensive. I like to make my production sound expensive. That's usually day 2. If there is a day 3, that'll carry into day 3. But generally speaking, I don't take a long time to start and finish music. So the first day is about sketching, just kind of spitballing, getting ideas out there, working out on an arrangement. The next day with fresh ears, getting rid of the clumsy, making it really sound professional, making it sound proper, making sure my bass is really, really strong. Obviously, I don't know. The way I see it is like, if your kick and bass combination is wrong, the foundation of the track is always the kick and bass for me. If that's not right, it's kind of like any foundation of any kind of structure. Weak foundation, weak structure, it's not going to sound right in the end. And I don't really like to struggle with that. Like, to me, that's distracting me from making something dope. So I always make sure that my kick and my bass combination is proper. Once that's proper, I don't have to think about it again. Maybe some balancing here and there, but once I make sure that's right, it's full steam ahead and just keep working and layering and editing and taking out and muting. So I don't know. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, totally. So it's, what I'm hearing is day 1 is very much creative process, and day 2 is like the producer stroke mixing engineer hat comes on more. There'll still be some creativity in there, but there's that kind of balance.
Correct. Yeah, for sure. And I found that, listen, at the end of the day, we could work on any piece of art, whether it be music, painting, video, whatever. We could work on it until the cows come home, till we're 100 years. But I find that the spontaneity and working in those short bursts, you just create things that, if you had all the time in the world, you would end up muting it or fucking it up, making it sound not what it was. You lose a lot of the rawness, you lose the spontaneity. So that's why I like to work in the way I work, the time structures. I think that's important as well, because there's something to be said about having too many possibilities and endless time. At the end of the day, we want to make music, and we want to make money too. Time is money. We don't want to spend 5 hours on writing hi-hats. That's silly. You're not going to sell more downloads or get more listens and views by the right hi-hat. I mean, I know the hi-hat I use, I'm just using that as an example, is good enough. I don't know. That's just how I see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the sayings that I kind of trot out quite a lot on the show is creativity loves speed, and creativity loves limitations. Both things that you've just really touched on there. So with that in mind, thinking of the spontaneity and the speed and efficiency of working, what is your setup like gear wise? Is it tried and tested? Do you bring new bits of gear in? How do you balance that? Because often people bring some new stuff in because it can be quite inspiring to get your hands on something new, and there's a million, billion, trillion plugins and things out there now that are all quite exciting, but everything that comes in runs the risk of disrupting the spontaneity and the efficiency. So I wonder how you manage the arrival of things and what your sort of pieces of gear are like at the moment.
Well, the first thing is I really view the space around me in my studio. I mean, I'll give you a little whatever. I mean, I view I view the space around me as, I call it very expensive real estate, right? So in order for whatever piece of gear to sit on my shelf or on a rack or whatever, it's valuable. The point I'm trying to make is the space around me, an arm's reach in front of me, is very, very valuable space. And for it to sit here and be with me, it has to inspire me to want to make music. If I haven't touched the thing in over a year, it's gone. All the gear that I have within an arm's reach is stuff that I use on the daily. I may not use everything on each track, but it's all stuff that I've used through the years that I love. A lot of it's old, a lot of it's new. Like I have all the Roland Aria stuff here. I have all the Torre stuff from Pioneer. Then again, I have, Navy Qs and Tube Techs and this and that. So the mix of the old and the new is important to me. But what's more important to me is that whatever gear, whether it was made in the 70s, 80s, or last week, it has to inspire me to make music. So what was the question?
Just really about the bringing of the gear in, and you said
all right,
to
so
inspire you to make music is balancing that with it getting in the way of the spontaneity.
Yeah, so to answer directly to the question, if it gets in the way of my spontaneity, my creative process, it's out of here. It's that simple. You know what I mean? You don't need a lot to make good music. You don't need a lot. Going back to having way too many options, I don't want to sit here and scratch my head and say, okay, no, I don't want that. I want to be able to know that I could turn on a machine and know that just the time it took me to reach over and turn it on is time well spent. You know what I mean? It's important that the gear that is around me inspires me to work. It's exciting to look at. I like looking at the shit. I'm like a little kid in a candy store. So, you know what I mean? So it's that simple for me. Like, it takes a long time and it takes a lot of due diligence on my part to bring in something new. Again, because the space around me is very valuable to me. I go online all the time. I'm constantly looking at new gear and stuff like that. And if it interests me, I'll buy it. If I buy it and I don't use it, I sell it. It's not doing anything, but you know what I'm saying? So I'm all about new gear as well, but it's got to be stuff that it has to bring something to the table. It's just not, I'm not going to buy another stupid little drum machine. I have too many of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Makes perfect sense. So on the sort of angle of things that potentially get in the way of creativity, are there any creative blocks that you've tend to come up against, or maybe that you have in the past? And how do you move past those? Because it is something that a lot of creatives struggle with. They hit certain walls, or
Yeah.
the voice in your head can be a tricky beast at times.
Yeah.
What have you encountered, and how have you overcome it?
The way I overcome it, every creative person will go through it. Painters, sculptors, songwriters, whatever, musicians. So for me, it's simple. I go in my studio and I make beats. It's that simple for me. I'll just go in the studio and literally program beats. And usually that'll inspire something. But there's times when quite honestly, you feel like you run out of ideas. In those instances, I'll come down here and I'll just pull up some of my drum kits and I'll just start programming. Just have fun. No method, no nothing. Just pull up the drums and start writing beats. I found that that's the best way to come out of, let's call it a writer's block. It's fun, it's creative, and with no pressure of, I gotta create a demo for this vocalist out in whatever that's waiting for some demos. No, just go and simplify things. To when I started, it was just making drum loops. That's it. And the music was filling. You'd fill in the drum loops with some what you would call music, samples, whatever. So when I find myself in those let's call them creative lows, I get in the studio and I program drums and I enjoy myself. I'm making music, I'm listening to music. And you might stumble across a new plugin that has a really cool kind of arpeggiator bass line, and you're off to the races. The writer's block is gone.
Love it. So it's basically show up and trust that it will come back. So go and have fun. It will
100%.
come
The
back.
day the days of being worried, oh, I'm done, I'm out of ideas. What am I gonna do now? I gotta get a job. I'm talking years ago, right? Those days are gone because you have to trust the process. And the process is sometimes you're gonna have days when you show up to the blank canvas and you got nothing to draw, nothing to paint. So in those instances, what do? You take out a sketch pad and you start doodling. So that's my doodling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And you mentioned about the sort of going back to what it used to be like for you.
Right.
Obviously, you've been in the game for a long time now, and you stayed relevant, still at the top of the game right now.
Yes.
Has there been a conscious decision to try and evolve your sound, to tweak things, to reinvent things as you go?
Of course. I mean, I can't, let me say we, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to be that guy that has been in the game a long time and suddenly I find myself in a bubble. That's a bad place, man. You have to know what's going on in the market. You have to know what's going on with the trends. I didn't say follow trends. I said you have to understand what the trends are. And it's always been a matter of putting your twist on what's happening. And in doing that, for me, I found that I create my own shit. Like, for example, a track, let's say one of my classic tracks like Tanya, that's nothing that DJ Sneak wasn't doing, 5 years prior to it. So I said, let me just try chopping a sample up this and that. And in doing so, I created my own thing and I created one of those tracks that still to this day, people identify me with that track. So it's embracing what's going on now, understanding the marketplace. Otherwise, the last thing you want to be is that guy in the studio that's saying, I'm gonna make tracks like I made them in 1997. Guess what? That shit ain't gonna fly, man, because the sonics have changed, the mastering has changed. The low end we were doing back then is maybe 30% of the low end we're doing now. So you have to stay competitive. You have to try and stay a step or two ahead of the game. And at the same time, stay true to what your ears love, stay true to what makes the hair on your arms stand up. And I think that's what's kept me relative. And also, you have to have a very strong work ethic, and you have to have very tough skin because in any of the arts, you know, you're going to come across people and situations where they're going to make you really question, why am I doing this? And you have to be able to answer that question. Why am I doing this? Because I love to make music. It's that simple for me. And so staying relative is a conscious thing. It's not a subconscious thing. It's not like I just come down here and do what I do and I say, hey, they better feel like it. It's me. I did this. No bullshit. Keep your ego in check. Know what's going on in the market. Be true to your ears. Be true to what makes the hairs on your arms stand up. And just enjoy yourself. Have fun in the studio. But always on the back of your mind, on the side somewhere in that little cozy corner, you have to know what's going on in the world that you're trying to be relative in and excel in. It's very important.
So you mentioned there for example, the difference in the bass and production values and so on. What other things have you spotted that have really developed over the years, and how have you brought those into the studio whilst staying true to yourself? I guess the staying true to yourself is going to keep coming down to the arms on the arms on your hairs. There you go, my turn. The hairs on your arms
Yeah.
standing up. But what other things have you sort of incorporated for you to keep with the trends?
Well, you listen. It's simple. You got to listen, right? There's a track. There's always a track in a set or two or three that when you're DJing say, this sounds exceptional. Like, wow, this sounds really good. So you listen to it. You dissect it. Take it home. Listen to it on your Genelex or whatever speakers you use, and you say, look how loud that kick drum is, or look at that ride cymbal, how loud it is. And I always try and, it's going to sound crazy, but I always try and take those tracks that inspire me, and I always try and make my track sound better. And that's my MO, man. That's just my thing. That's how I approach it. I'm like, this sounds cool, but let me try and make it sound better in my production. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I don't. But the point is that I'm trying to push that envelope. Like for me, if we listen back to the tracks that we were making in the 90s and let's say 2000s, the kick drums were low compared to the way it is now. Now the bass we're squeezing out of these mixes is maybe back in the day we were to hear, we'd be like, whoa, that sounds crazy. But that's the status quo now. It's like it's going back to staying relative. You want to stay relative, it's across the whole board. You know, relative in your sets, got to play shit that's dope, you know, and current. And in the studio, it's got to sound competitive with the market. Like I'll make a track, right, and then for shits and giggles, I'll go to either Traxsource, Beep, or whatever, and just listen and say, okay, my shit sounds better than that. We're on the right track. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So it's that kind of ballet, if you will.
Yeah, totally. I get it. And now you tweeted previously about how much you love learning new things, which I think is
Yeah,
great. So you're a student of the game, which is always fantastic.
yeah.
What was the last big thing that you learned that had a sizable impact on your productions, if there is such a thing? I don't know, it might just be incremental bits, but I'm just wondering if something stands out in your memory that you were like, oh, this technique, maybe it sped up your workflow or had a big impact on your productions, the quality, for example.
There's something I learned. I don't know if it's something I learned, but it's something that I started to implement in my daily sessions. Is I work in Logic, right? So I'm constantly creating Apple loops, my own Apple loops. If I have a hi-hat pattern that I love, I'll create an Apple loop. If I have a kick drum that I love, create an Apple loop. Conga loop, create the Apple loop. This has been such a huge thing for me in the sense that a lot of the monkey work, what I call, is trying to find the right hi-hat, trying to find the right snare, the right clap. I have access to them with the pencil, with the mouse. Boom, boom, audition, go quick, drag it in. So what if I use that clap on the last 4 tracks? It's a stupid clap. Who cares? But it just makes you work faster because you don't have to think, is this the right clap? Does it sound good? You know it does. It's proven. You've played it out to hundreds of, thousands of people. You know the shit works. It sounds great on all systems. Sounds good in your car, on your phone, in the booth, out in the club. So really creating Apple loops has been a huge thing for me because, for a number of reasons. One, you're creating your own library. That's your own. It's your own thing. And quick access because you can audition in time and, you can change the key, whatever. So that's been a really huge workflow thing that I've implemented in my sessions.
Yeah, I love it. And it's one of the things that I teach as well, because I think a trap that a lot of people fall into, particularly when they're starting out, is they try to think their way into what the perfect library might be like,
No, man.
instead of organically growing it with their taste, the direction they're going, and all of those things. And one of them, it's almost, it's happening as you're making music. The other one
Yeah.
is the big, heavy, admin intensive thing that nearly always falls flat on its face when you start writing music and go, oh, those two sounds don't really go together, or that's
Yeah.
I've got this big bloated library of stuff I've built and none of it is really floating my
Yeah.
boat at all.
Right. Another thing that I did, I actually did this like about 3 years ago, is I took all my Akai samples from my samplers, the S3000s and the whatevers, and I made Apple loops with my entire library. It took me about a week to do, but I have access to all my samples from day one, which was fucking amazing, man. It was super labor intensive. It took a long time because you had to trigger the sample, record it inside your DAW, go in the DAW, truncate it, clean it up nice. Maybe take, if I had a kick drum under it, EQ it out a little bit, master it, so to speak, and then put it in the Apple. It took a long time, but I'll tell you what, that's the best 3 or 4 days that I spent in the studio in a long time, to be able to, take your samples from day one and have a digital version of them where you could just drag and drop is amazing.
So it comes back to the spontaneity as well, and that you've got your idea and boom, you've got it. Creativity, lightning
Exactly.
speed. Yeah,
Exactly.
brilliant. One of the things that you gave a piece of advice out previously, I saw, which was just basically saying to up and coming producers, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, for sure.
And you also mentioned that there are some questions that you hadn't asked that you wish you had. And realize I'm asking you to plumb the depths of your memory here, but was there anything that you sort of discovered later on and you just thought, oh, for God's sake, why didn't I just bloody ask that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what it is like I was a very shy guy. You know what I mean? I wasn't so like I wouldn't just go up to anybody and say, "Hey, how did you blah 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 blah." But like me, I always encourage people, you know, direct message me. You have like a question. I mean, again, if you're gonna ask me what MIDI is, like, hey, do you know what MIDI is? I'm not gonna answer that because there's Google, right? I mean, seriously. But if you ask me a smart question that, you know, for example, Harry, how much bass do you roll off your bass lines to keep it manageable with your kick drum? I'll answer that. You know, I'll say, man, anywhere between 30, 45, 50 hertz. So those, I love answering those kind of questions because I want to be helpful. You know, at the end of the day, this is kind of a small community. It's not, although it's huge, but it's small. In my mind, it's still small. I want to be able to help producers, young men and young women, get from point A to point B in a more efficient, faster way, as opposed to spinning and spinning and spinning. Because sometimes when you spin in the studio, it's not a good thing. You know what I mean? I think that the time you spend in the chair should be that of having fun, being creative, and getting shit done. Now, what are the questions that I wish I would have asked? I wish I would have asked somebody like Todd Terry, you know, where did you get that hi-hat? Like on the jumping, where did that loop come from? You know what I mean? Or how, you know, where were those snares coming from? What kind of swing were you using to get that swing in the late 80s, early 90s? Kenny, I would have loved to have asked Kenny, like, you know, I wish I could have been a fly on his shoulder when he made tracks like, you know, the Untouchables or the Bucketheads and stuff like that. So just simple questions back then. But again, I was a shy dude. I'd see those guys all the time, you know, on Wednesday nights at Sound Factory Bar, and there was no way in hell I was going to go up and ask them anything. You know, now we have the comfort of doing it from your phone or your home and this and that. You don't have to show your face. So it's a lot easier now, I feel, to ask questions and get a legitimate response back from someone that's been doing it a long time, like myself. So I feel like it's a service that I want to provide for people. And that's why I do the courses as well. I don't do those courses to get rich. Believe me, I don't. I do them because I want to give back to something that is giving me. Spending that time creating those tutorials, it's important for me to, like I said earlier, for those young men and women producers to work in a more efficient way and have those moments where like, that's how he did that. And then they take that idea into their workplace and their productions and come up with a way of doing it different than me, maybe better. And let me know if you found a better way to do it. Holler at me. You know, I'd love to be more efficient in the studio and learn shit.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea as well of by helping people to be able to create freely, there are more ideas that go into the pool of the music and our scene and what we like. There's more inspiration from more people across the board.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I think it was last year that you said you felt that techno had gotten bland and boring. How true do you still think that is?
Well, let's go see, just for shits and giggles, let's go to Beatport and see what the top track is in the techno chart. I'm just curious. I haven't done this in a while. Let's go to genre.
This is awesome. I didn't expect us to do this in real time. I love it.
Neither did I. And hopefully I won't get myself in trouble right now. All right, what style techno? What are we doing now? Melodic house and techno, minimal deep
yeah, now you're done for. You've opened up the can of worms here on Beatport, my friend.
So let's not even put ourselves in harm's way. I'll just say that the days of the Juan Atkins and the techno dudes out of Detroit, I don't know what happened. But the techno I'm hitting, I'm speaking in general terms. It's just so uninspiring. It's a lot of it just lacks soul. There are those gems out there. Don't ask me to give you any titles because off the top of my head, I would have to go through my DJ music. But generally speaking, it's, you know, I don't know. It's just uninspiring, man. I mean, yeah, you can put a big kick drum at 132 beats per minute with loud ride cymbals. You can call that techno, but and it technically it is, but it's just missing that soul. It's missing the blackness. You follow me?
So, what do you think is the cause of that?
I think I just answered it.
No, but I mean, as in what has led to that happening? What's
I
the
don't I don't know, man. We could say that for any genre, really. I mean, it's just the accessibility to making music now is so easy. I think that I mean, this is just me off the cuff. I think that music in general, I'm not speaking just about techno, but I'm including techno in this. It's become so easy to make air quotes music that I think the market is being flooded with a lot of mediocre music. And I think that the stage for proper dope is become harder to find. It's still there, obviously. There are people that are pushing the envelope. Don't ask me who. I'd have to go to my stuff. But generally speaking, that it's not. We're not living in the days where there's an A&R person that goes out 3-4 nights a week, has their finger on the pulse, as they say, their ear to the street, and is writing checks. That person doesn't exist anymore. A lot of the labels now are based around a DJ and a producer, right? So although they are viable businesses, but there's nobody really writing a check anymore. And I feel that if a person's going to invest their money, they're going to think long and hard. Do I really want to put this out? Am I going to make a return? You understand what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
We lost that filter in the system, and that's allowed, which is a good thing too. That's allowed people to just put their music directly to the market. That's awesome too, because you don't have to go through the middle people. But at the same time, it's changed the mechanism in which music is put out, right? So if back in the day the advance was 1,500 US, those people, the people writing the check, the Mark Finkelsteins, the Mike Weisses of the world, they had to know they were getting their return, right? So a lot of stuff was rejected that nowadays you see on the stores, the digital stores. Does that make sense what I said?
Yeah, totally. Basically, barrier for entry has all but been removed. You can self-release now, so it's been completely removed in
Correct.
that respect.
Again,
and so
it's a double-edged sword.
And so in some respects, do you feel that means that the labels now, the bigger labels, have maybe got even more responsibility to release the best stuff? Or is it, because I'm trying to think, we know that some good music comes out and some of the best taste
Yeah.
setters are people who have the big labels, but simultaneously I also don't want to quite let go of the days of going into the record store and digging through for the almost rare exclusive, and there are still those tracks. But I'm just wondering, in terms of the quality filters, how do you feel that plays out? Because on the one hand we go, okay, there's the people who run the labels that we respect, to the taste setters, people like yourself as well, the DJs who are going to pick the tracks. On the other hand, the people can just now go and get all of those tunes, and we have a lot of carbon copy stuff happening. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on sort of the balance of that.
Oh man, that's a tough one, man, because it's the Wild West out there, man. It's tough. It's really, really tough to kind of gauge it. It's tough to get your head around. I mean, people are literally taking songs, moving a couple things around, adding a kick drum, and doing their thing. I mean, that's just crazy. You know what I mean? That's insane. Like, really? I don't know. That's a tough question, man. What I do know is that it's going back to what I said, a few minutes ago. It's a double-edged sword. It is good that people have a short commute to the public. That's an important thing, but it's also important that that we keep the quality control we hold that in a high standard, which a lot of labels do. I'm just looking here. Beatport's still up. I'm looking at Nervous. I'm looking at Cecile. What else? I mean, like Kitball. They all put out dope. So they know what they're doing, right? But I just feel like there's a lot of mediocre music out there, and there's a lot of great music out there. But the mediocre sometimes is kind of clouding the water, and it's kind of hard to find those gems. It really is. What the solution is, I have no idea, man, because it's like Pandora's box has been opened, and that's just the new now.
It's interesting because you said previous as well, don't make tracks for bookings. That's not art. They kind of don't copy and paste. And the minute that you said that, it got me to thinking how many times I've heard a production come out, a track, and I've been like, wow, that's like an interesting sound. There's kind of new, or the way they've used a synth there, and there's this and it's almost like a signature sound in a way that the artist has come up with, and maybe they'll use it in a couple of tracks because they've struck gold. Within a month, there's a load of tracks that are coming out using that thing. And so I wonder what your thoughts are, I suppose, on that, and the fact that it feels like music is a lot more, and I hate saying this, but it feels like it's a lot more disposable these days. I remember, again, going back to the record shops, a piece of vinyl that you've sourced that nobody else has got could be something you'd be totally into for well over a year. It would be a thing. Whereas now it seems that stuff gets recycled really quickly. I don't know if that's, getting that message out might be a part of the solution that we're talking about.
I think the disposable thing comes from what I said earlier. It's that there's not much of an investment in it anymore. So what happens is, like, so let's say, I don't know, DJ, pick a name, DJ one, let's say. There's probably a DJ whatever, DJ asterisk symbol. Let's say he spent a week and he spent some money on a production, right? Let's say he spent £1,000 to get it to where it's right. He had the background singers, he had the whatever, he hired a guitar soloist, a guitar player, bass player. So he puts it out, he gets 30 downloads. Guess what? The chances of him going and spending £1,000 on making a beautiful piece of music, they start little by little, it starts getting smaller and smaller, diminishing. So your approach changes to the creative process, because it has to make sense, right? The return has to be there. If you're investing money in something, I don't care what it is. You want to make towels? It takes, let's say it costs $3 to make a dozen. You're not going to sell them for $2. You're losing money. So it's a subconscious and a conscious. Happens to producers. It happens to me. I come from the days, and I hate to sound like an old fart, but I come from the days of, we hired the vocal arranger, we hired the engineer to sit in, we hired the keyboard players, the guitars, the bass, and that, and we invested $3,000-$4,000 just to get a working demo, right? But the return was crazy, right? Because it made sense. We knew we were going to get the licenses, the pre-orders, 10,000 units, blah blah blah. Nowadays, it's like, do I really? And I'm speaking about me personally. Do I really want to go ahead and hire all these people and spend the money on something that ain't going to do, where I'm not going to get a return, right? So what happens? We start cutting back. And I'm talking about me personally. I'm just being straight up and honest. It affects how it seriously does. And that's a struggle with me. That's a push and pull with me, because I was one side of it. Now I'm on the other side of it. So I get how things sound completely different when you hire people to do things, right? I don't play bass. You get a Gene Perez or one of the New York bass dudes come in and play, you're gonna have to pay them, and rightfully so. They're working hard. They're providing a service and creative input and this and that. So that has, me personally, that has really affected how I approach things. I'm still having fun, but at the same time, I'll be in a situation sometimes like, damn, I wish I had a bass player here. Guess what? Sometimes I may just hire the bass player to come in and do the thing. But sometimes I'm like, man, it ain't even worth it. Let me just play it on a synth. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that ultimately what I do, I'm still proud of, but I know it would have sounded different had I had the budget and it made financial sense to do so. I don't know if I answered your question, but I think I did.
Yeah, no, totally. I was really just talking about I guess, the throwaway nature of things and people copying other people instead of.
Well, it's easy
I think
to
what
copy.
you put was right when you said it's not art, and I think that's, for me, is at the core of this, is to remember that this is about art, and art requires creativity. Creativity is creating something new. It doesn't. Yes, we can start with something that is, we borrowed a bit there and a bit there, and then we innovate and we create something new out of it. Whole genres are created like that and exist because of it.
For sure.
That's creativity, whereas
Right.
copying is the complete opposite. It's just doing the same thing again, whether it's your same thing, someone else's same thing. And I feel that contributes a lot to the throwaway
I
nature
agree.
of stuff, because a carbon copy might just be around the corner.
Well, it's lazy. It's just straight up lazy. You know what I mean? Now, I could see if a particular artist had a body of work that spoke for itself, and he or she had a moment where they said, let me just do an edit of for example, I'll use me. I did an edit of Hot Music by Pal Joey, right? I just did it to play out. But then Phil Weeks got wind of it and he's like, I want to put it out. I'm like, bro, I'm not really into that. He's like, let me just put it out. I said, you know what? My body of work speaks for itself. I can have a moment like this, put it out. And it did really well. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to hide anything. It is what it is. You hear it. And if you know about the history of music, of house music, you'll know the sample. I'm not trying to, pull the wool over anyone's eyes. My body of work speaks for itself. Point is that if you have a body of work that speaks for itself, you can have moments like that and it's okay, right? But don't base your career around that. That's where I have a problem with. You understand what I'm saying?
Totally.
So that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, totally. So if we sort of round this out to the sort of the positive stuff for people listening, and we go back into that idea of making your own art and being liberated and creating
Yeah.
freely and getting out there, what would be your biggest piece of advice to somebody now who's just starting out, maybe been in it for a year or so, producing music? What would be the thing that you would say, look, double down on this, guys, and this will serve you well?
Well, I've said this on many interviews and I'll say it on this one because why change it? It's the truth. It's how I feel. You got to know your history, man. You got to know your history. If you're a fashion designer, you better know who, Halston is or whatever. I'm not a big fashion dude. It's just names that I know. You got to know these things because then what you're doing is you're creating in a bubble. You have to know who Frankie Knuckles was. You have to know who Larry Levan. You have to know who Masters at Work is. Muta Swing. I mean, Derek Carter. The names go on and on. You have to know this music, man. You really do, because you want to be able to have an intellectual conversation and know, like, and in other words, know the root of your music, and it'll make you that much better. So do your due diligence, know your history. Going back to what I said early on, know the marketplace. More importantly, ask questions and have fun. We have so much information now online. It's crazy. Like YouTube, you learn how to mix, you could learn basics of mixing on YouTube. That's amazing. I spent hours next to one of the best engineers on the planet Dave Darlington. I learned by watching him. I didn't have YouTube. And in a way, I'm kind of glad. But the point is that now there's a plethora of places where you can go find information, educate yourself, no matter what it is. You want to be a doctor? Guess what? You just don't wake up one day and say, I'm a doctor, let me go operate. No, you got to educate yourself. It's the same. I feel it's the same thing with music.
Yeah, I love that. And you become a part of something as well, because the culture of dance music and it's been a wonderful ride, and it still continues to be. I know we've sort of dipped into the universe is a place of duality, that for positives there are negatives, and we've got to talk about these things, but also there is a journey, and you are a piece of this, and you can be a part of that history. And I agree. I think it is very important to immerse yourself in the things that you do and understand the culture as well. And a lot of people do, they go out clubbing and they're in that, but there's a lot that's come before it, and a lot of people who've built and built and built to get us to this stage. So awesome stuff. I mean, thank you so much for the journey that we've been through in this episode. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh man, my pleasure, man. You know, I could talk about this shit for hours and days, but you know, but yeah, I mean, it's I love this stuff, man. I mean, it's been a huge blessing to be able to express myself in the genre of house music, and you know, from techno to soulful house. To me, it's all house music, whatever. But it's been a blessing. It's been amazing, and doing interviews and podcasts like this is my way of giving back. And thank you for having me to be able to have these conversations, and for have them, you know, online to live for you know, perpetuity. It's amazing. We can always go back to this 20 years from now, and we're all old and decrepit, and say, I remember that day. You know what I mean? So
I can't awesome. Remember what the phrase was that you said now. It's lost on me, the one that we won't be editing out. But
I don't want to repeat it.
Yeah, we can listen back to that in 20 years. So did he really say that on the internet for perpetuity?
I said dictates.
That's it. So look, just before we head off, what have you got coming out? What can we look forward to that's coming out of your studio? And are you already got gigs and things booked in now that things are starting to lift, where people can come and hear you play again?
I mean, the one thing right now, I mean, I'm obviously working on a bunch of stuff, some remixes coming out, so that. But the one thing that is you know, gives me that warm fuzzy feeling is a track I just did with one of my all-time, let's call him idols, although he's a friend, but he's the person that I used to go listen to on Wednesdays at the Sound Factory bar, one half of Masters at Work. I just did a track with Louis Vega called El Ritmo, which means the rhythm in Spanish. And it's a collaboration that him and I, you know, I've been tossing drums to him for a couple of years now. Finally, this one caught his ear. He sent it back with some keyboards, this and that. And we collaborated on it that way. I'm super proud of it. It's coming out on Bambossa. I think it's coming out tomorrow or next week.
Amazing.
I think. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, so the collaboration I did with Louis, which his idea actually, and I can't believe he suggested this, but I'm so glad he did. He suggested I put it out on my label Bambossa. So super excited about it. You know, you think you've gotten to the top of every mountain there is, but this is one of those moments for me. It's a bucket list thing, and I'm so proud of the track, and I'm so excited to have collaborated with someone like Louis Vega. So big ups to Louis. Hopefully the track does well. Hopefully the public accepts it, likes it, plays it.
That's awesome.
And dances to it. Please, let's dance to it.
Yeah, congrats, man. Well, look, I'll definitely be keeping my eyes peeled for that for sure.
And don't just stare at me with the cell phone like this when I'm playing it in the club. Put the phone down and dance, and then do a little picture.
Yeah, let's not get onto the iPhones. I think we could both be there for another 30 minutes going on about that one. Anyways, let's wrap this up. I just want to extend my thanks to you again for jumping on the show, sharing all of your knowledge and expertise. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you, and God bless you guys. And maybe we'll have a pint somewhere over there on the other side of the pond one of these days.
100%. I'll be in touch when you're playing it. Well,
all right,
we're coming out to the US in the not too distant future. So
nice.
If I'm in the area, I shall let you know.
Absolutely. God bless. Thank you, guys.
All the best. Thanks, Harry.